I'm Mike Baccarell, and today we're going to take a look at this really wide range arpeggio that derives from the diminished scale that Joe Pass plays. Let's take a look. This arpeggio comes from Joe Pass's instructional video, Solo Jazz Guitar. And if you've never checked out Joe's instructional videos, I highly recommend you do, because Joe really does a really good job of breaking down how simply he looks at music. It's really eye-opening to see that he views things as just major, minor, and dominant. Even though he might be playing some really fancy stuff, he doesn't really view it in any fancy way. So it's really good to see how all this stuff that might seem complicated can be simplified into such an easily digestible manner. This arpeggio is played over some sort of G7 altered, whether it's a G7 flat 9 or G7 flat 9 with a 13, or G7 flat 5, flat 9, or any sort of altered chord, but it has a regular 13, not a sharp 5. So that's the one distinction we need to make. Joe starts in the root of the 3rd fret of the 6th string with a G. He goes up to A flat, and he goes up a diminished 7th arpeggio from here. B, D, F, A flat. So there's the first chunk. And all that is a diminished arpeggio starting on the A flat. And so far our chord tones are 1, flat 9, 3, 5, flat 7, flat 9. So it's a 7 flat 9 arpeggio. And from here Joe pivots. He jumps to an E major triad. So he plays B natural on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, E natural on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, G sharp or A flat, B natural on the 1st string of the 7th fret, and he jumps all the way up to E with his pinky. So our resulting chord tones, we have the 7 flat 9 arpeggio like we said, then we have a major 3rd, a 13, a flat 9, a 5th, and a 13 again. So all this comes out of the diminished scale. And it's really cool because he's combining 2 different arpeggios. So as you climb, you get different colors as you go up. Instead of repeating the same arpeggio in different octaves, he's jumping to a different arpeggio once he gets to a certain point, which is really colorful and will give you some really cool sounds. So where does this come from? Obviously, I said this comes from the diminished scale, but how does Joe see this like that? Well, Joe talks about in his videos common altered chord shapes he really likes, and Joe improvises using these chord shapes just like Charlie Christian would. So he might play, the 7 sharp 5, sharp 9 shape, and he'll play a line like that or something. But in this case, he plays this 13 flat 9 shape quite a bit, and this comes right out of the diminished scale. And if you play a G13 flat 9, you see the top 3 strings create an E major triad. We have B, E, and G sharp. So he's climbing the diminished part and then jumping to that part, and it all comes from that chord shape. One thing that I think is a running theme through my videos is the idea of taking whatever line you're playing and trying to associate it with a chord shape you already know. That way you can grab it much easier and see how it interacts with what you're playing. I think that is incredibly crucial to getting some of these concepts down. And we can see right here, Joe is very much picturing that chord shape. Now, because this comes from the diminished scale, we could also move it around in minor thirds. And so each of those are from the same diminished scale and can also be played over G7. This one is just an inversion of the diminished, and it goes up a G major triad. This next one's another inversion of the diminished arpeggio. You go up a B flat major triad, and then same here, another inversion. And you go up a D flat major triad. And all 4 of these triads come from the diminished scale. E major, G major, B flat major, and D flat major all come from the same diminished scale. So we can use these over G7. These 4 arpeggios can be played over G7, but they can also be played over B flat 7 altered, D flat 7 altered, and E7 altered. This is a really cool line that I picked up from Joe's video, and it's really opened my eyes. Now, he only plays it over the G7 portion, but once it occurred to me that I can move these around to different versions, it really blew my mind for a second. I was like, wow, this is such a cool sound and a cool way to climb the neck rapidly over a large range, all the while getting some really cool sounds. So thanks for checking out today's lesson. Keep practicing. I'll see you next time.